You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenDrafts.com. I'm John Negroni.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today we're doing a manga recap, maybe 3, of One Piece chapters 1137 through 1139. That is right, 3 chapters as we are catching up this week finally. And Travis, can I just say, these chapters, let's call them a monster trio.
Real good, real good. You could say that we're in for a showdown for the ages, trying to tackle these 3 chapters in a single episode.
Yeah, they're just 3 of the most momentous One Piece chapters in several arcs. So anyway, as usual, we're going to be discussing spoilers for the One Piece manga up until this point. So if you have not yet read all the way up to and through One Piece 1139, be sure to do so now for free on the Viz website or the Shonen Jump app, linked in the show notes as always. And remember, all new One Piece chapters are available to read for free up to 3 weeks after their official release or whenever you want, if you are subscribed to Shonen Jump, which we are, and do recommend. And Travis, before we jump into the chapters, I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
It's been on my heart. It's been on my heart and my soul. Solo Leveling. It's top tier. Season 2, it's been hitting. It's right now most popular on Crunchyroll, and I don't know if you're caught up on it. But coming from somebody who has read the manhwa and the light novels and finished them with a sour taste in my mouth, mind you, I am feeling like this anime they're kind of killing it. But you know what the problem is?
What's the problem?
I don't have anybody to talk about it with.
Are you saying to me right now, John, that you don't have any kind of space where you could discuss an anime with people and get
Well,
their
yeah,
takes?
specifically Solo Leveling is such an action-packed anime. There's so much chaos and mayhem and discord.
Oh, where have I heard that before? It's on like the tip of my tongue. Like there's some sort of resource that you could use that you just like sign into an account and go into a space labeled anime, and you could just type out what you just told me about Solo Leveling instead of waiting to get me in a room where I can't escape you.
See, I used to do that for Twitter.
Oh.
But then Twitter went evil, and so then I was like, well, now I can't go online to a bunch of people that I know, trust, and enjoy conversations with and tell them what I think.
Yeah.
Usually,
this
layered
episode
behind irony.
Yeah, this episode's going to go long, so I'm just going to cut to the chase and say, if you promise to not treat it like Twitter, we will let you back into the In Between Drafts Discord server, and you will be allowed to post again.
Wait, you're going to unban me from what is called the unbannable server?
Yes.
What if I have more hot takes that anger the mods? You'll kick me out until the next. You'll kick me out.
We'll quarantine you.
Yeah,
the next great anime. But you can in fact go to the In Between Drafts Discord server right now. There is an anime channel. You can post your hot takes, whether it's about Solo Leveling being good or about Sakamoto Days being mid. These are perfectly safe spaces to do that. And maybe
I heard it's mid. I heard it's not living up to the manga. What happened, Travis? This was the chosen one.
My guess is budget, to be real with you. I still have to do the review of this week's episode, which, by the way, Netflix, get your act together and please catch it up. Why are we a week behind in Japan for why? Anyway, that's a different rant. But we could have these conversations in the In Between Drafts Discord server, which is linked in the show notes. Just saying.
But hopefully we'll do a legit anime check-in in the near future. We don't have time to do a real one today because we have 3 One Piece chapters. So many.
We have business.
Many. But let's start it off. Travis, I'm looking over here. I got chapter 1137 popping up on my screen, introducing Shamrock. Can you explain this cover story to me? The cover story, it's 3 parts. We could either do it all at once or just do it as Oda intended.
Let's just knock it out, because then we can focus on the meat and potatoes of things.
Sure.
It's like reading it in the volume form. It's fine. Oda will be fine. So we are, in fact, continuing the Ogre Child Yamato's Golden Harvest Surrogate Pilgrimage. We're going from volume 23 to 25. We're going to cover a lot of ground here. But we see basically Yamato and Tama and Speed start to stick their head in at this fortress with a big cat head, wondering to themselves who could be inside of here, and they see Wano-dressed people kind of standing guard, but they all have cat ears, and they've definitely never seen anybody with cat ears before. Definitely not at all during the Wano arc. But in the following chapter...
neither of them... Well, hey, sorry, none of them were in Syrup Village, let's be clear.
Yeah, none of them were in Syrup Village. Never, ever. But no, this is not the long-awaited return of Captain Kuro. The next chapter does reveal in volume 24 that it is, in fact, as we very clearly pointed out, it's Who's Who. He has somehow Who's Who.
Who?
The uber racist that fought Jinbei during the Wano arc. He was, of course, the first person to speak the name Nika, to give us that to go off of. So he is a character of note, for what it's worth. One of the closest people to the Gum Gum fruit ever as well. So he's
That's
here.
right.
He's got his crew, which he had. They were members of the Animal Kingdom Pirates. And you can kind of piece together what's happening at this point. He's got, women kind of fawning over him. There are some that are not wearing masks. So this is also very likely our answer to who's been kidnapping people. They're waiting on him hand and foot. He's kind of set himself up as kind of his own little pseudo warlord here. And then, of course, in the most recent chapter, we see that he has two people brought before him, not Yamato and Tama. They haven't been caught, but they're brought before him. They're silhouetted. He goes to pull out this sword that was just stolen to presumably perform an execution. And the only thing that I can tell about these two people is that they have horns, John. What do you think?
Who could that be?
Who could that be?
Surely not Page One and Ulti.
Surely not Page One and Ulti. So it does look like we are getting the Toby Ropo proper all during this cover story, which is neat. We were hoping for that, to see where these characters are going to go. So looks like we're going to get what we asked for.
And how? Yeah, you mentioned in the first one that you said it looked like Speed was looking through the window. I don't see
Speed's
Speed.
with them. Yeah, Speed is with them, I guess I should say. They're not
Speed
in the image, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then who wins in a fight? Who's who, or Rob Lucci?
I mean, it's got to be Rob Lucci, right?
By a hair, though, or is it a route?
I think that Who's Who could probably get Lucci to actually awaken, like to go into his awakened form, because you know how Lucci is. He's not just going to go, all out right from the drop because he doesn't have respect for anybody. But I think awakened Lucci still wins in that fight. I think it's kind of hard to top that.
Well, I think he definitely wins. We agree on that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you think it's a blowout, but
I don't think it's a blowout. I think
yeah.
I think it requires the awakening, so that kind of makes it not a blowout.
Okay, fair enough. We can let the power scalers handle the rest.
Yeah, let us know in the Discord.
I'm going to breeze through 1137 and 1138 in terms of the summaries and get a little bit more detailed with 1137, okay? Or, sorry, 1139. So yes, 1137, this one's called Shamrock Appears. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Road are exploring the abandoned Arist Castle. They discover the remnants of this really brutal battle where Loki apparently killed over 100 soldiers. The only survivors were himself and Ja Rule. So this was, of course, where King Harold bit it. They learn a lot, actually, here. One of the things being that the giants actually carry the blood of the ancient giants. So we get more of a distinction between giants and the ancient giants who had the horns, like oars. So Luffy even mentions this or references it. And so we have, this is a big lore dump here in a great way, because we get the sense, okay, the giants have been mixing and breeding. And that kind of shows that, the giants of today, why they're different than they would have been before. We see that there's a portrait, and it shows us King Harold. He's a looker. And even though he does have ancient giant lineage, he removed his horns in order to symbolize that they're departing from this other era of wars, the Warland Elbaf. So clearly he was some kind of idealist of sorts. It's also revealed that Hajrudin and Loki are half-brothers. They have the same father, but different mothers. I don't think this was explained explicitly yet. I think we knew that there was something about them that kind of had them estranged like this, but yeah, now it's being spelled out here. So Hajrudin, in fact, faced a lot of discrimination growing up because of his mixed heritage, but we don't yet know too much information about that quite yet. And then we go to the underworld area with Loki, where Gunko is using what's called the arrow fruit. And she is attacking Loki, trying to force him into the Holy Knights. And her partner finally is revealed as Figurlin Shamrock. And so this is the son of Garling, a commander in the Gods Knights, and basically who we all kind of we knew the deal. This was like the evil Shanks, most likely the Shanks that we saw confront the Gorosei all the way back in the Reverie, right before the Wano arc. And yeah, it looks like Figurlin Shamrock, it really wants to bring Elbaf under world government control, and in a hurry. And so that leads us into 1138. So 1138 This one is called Harley. And we get so many revelations in this chapter. Loki confronts Shamrock, asking about like why do you look like Shanks? We're all kind of on our tippy toes about that. Shamrock discloses that Shanks is his younger twin brother who chose the pirate's life over, being a god's knight and all that stuff. And Shamrock, we get to see how powerful he really is. He has a sword that it apparently is imbued with some kind of Cerberus devil fruit. This is the second time, I think, that we have seen a sword that has apparently consumed a devil fruit and taken its form. It could be exactly like what we've seen before, or it could be something totally new. And so, yeah, Shamrock literally unleashes a 3-headed Cerberus dog against Loki, and his whole thing is that, like, and I don't have to do it myself. Like, you're so beneath me, the sword is going to do what it do. Lots of power scalers talking about the Mihawk versus Shamrock, kind of situation here. So that should be fun. Meanwhile, Robin and Frankie are still kind of exploring the ancient texts and the murals. They're in different places, but we're kind of getting it patched together because Robin is still with what's his name, Saul, over in the like nursery area where the kids are. We have this like tension, right, that the Gods Knights are going to be heading over to where the children are in order to basically force Elbaf to like come under the world government. So, Robin and Saul are clearly in trouble. But then Frankie also is like learning more about the Atom Tree and uncovering all kinds of things. This is where we learn about Harley, the Harley scriptures, the Holy Bible of One Piece. And so these writings apparently chronicled the entire world's history in 3 different parts or eras or epics, whatever you want to call it. So there's the first world, where mankind's greed, led to all kinds of catastrophes we can surmise, right? There was this big transformative change. And then we also had the second world, which is the Void Century, everything culminating with that. And then we are approaching the third world. So this is going to be the end of it, essentially. So you can kind of mark it that way, particularly when it comes to Luffy himself being the Joy Boy, and then there was Joy Boy, and before that there was Nika. So it's all kind of marked by that. And we see the mural. We see the mural that could hint at what our upcoming future war could be like. And it is incredible. I mean, it is just like so many little bits and pieces. We could just talk an hour on the mural itself, I assume, I suppose. And then finally, that brings us to 1139, which is called Mountain Eater. And in this chapter, Luffy, Zoro, and Nami and Road are still exploring the castle, looking for Loki's chains. They find the magic circle that the Gods Knights use to get to Elbaf, and then they encounter Yasan, who is revealed, of course, to be Scopper Gaban, a former member of the Roger Pirates, and Ripley's partner, believe it or not. It's been revealed. A lot of things have been revealed. The man marked by flames, not Scopper Gaban. In fact, Scopper Gaban is this figure who one of the, if not the most popular theory, I think it was between Gaban and Shiki, the Golden Lion. Shiki, I think, had the juice for some folks because of his outfit. But no, it's Scopper Gaban. That was the one with Crocus, of course, in that one cover story and all that good stuff. So Gaban kind of challenges Luffy, starts to see some of Roger in Luffy. It's very heartwarming. But he, of course, is, not exactly going along with this idea about Luffy getting the key, so that he would have to defeat him in combat. And so, who's going to win? And then meanwhile, the Giants talk to Usopp and the others about Scopper Gaban. We learn how legendary he really was. We get some real insight into what he was able to do as really Roger's, Sanji, essentially. And so we kind of get a monster trio formed out in a more how should I say this? A more immortalized fashion. So it's like really confirmed here that yes, Gaban was as powerful as Silver's Rayleigh, at least at the same level, or at least he probably thinks himself such. And yeah, it's essentially, Roger, Rayleigh, and Gaban is Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. There you go. We did it. And then, yeah, how does the chapter end? Let me go to the last page. I want to make sure. There's so much. Oh, yeah. It's when he's like just challenging him. He's like, oh yeah, if you're gonna have to challenge me, Luffy, and they're gonna have their fight. So yeah, who are they really gonna fight, Travis?
Oh yeah, this is. I mean, let's kind of get the elephant in the room here, which is his design. He's Master Roshi. That's
He's
what
a
he is.
perv.
He's, I mean, yeah. And my question now is, was he always going to look like this, or did Oda make some strategic changes in the last year based on, things like the death of Akira Toriyama, or was the plan always to do this? Of course, Dragon Ball is Oda's favorite manga. This was probably an inevitability, but yeah, I think they scrap. Why wouldn't they scrap?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I want to walk through so many different things.
Yeah.
Road calls the summoning thing a demon summoning. I think there's some in the official translation. So lots of questions around the yokai demon thing getting re-invoked. So, or I guess invoked, because we always just took the yokai thing as a fan base and kind of piecing it together. We haven't had, right? Like
Yeah, it's not been
the real
text,
confirmation.
right?
Yes. So how do you feel about that?
This is interesting because I don't know if one of us had floated it, but I had seen it floated around that the old summoning circle that Brooke ended up at way back, Sabaody, when they got separated, could have been one of these circles. And now that seems more feasible, that there are just these warp points kicking around that can be used. Now, we didn't see the one that the Gorosei used on Egghead prior to them using it, but this one has stuck around for some reason, and that's very interesting.
Interesting.
It does look
Luffy
different
says,
than
like,
that one.
or somebody says, like, is it a lost soul from beyond the grave come back to haunt us? Like, that's one of those lines where it's like, could that just be some not so subtle foreshadowing? Like, not literally that, but a hint as to either what it is or, what it might be like. I don't know.
I think that's actually Road looking at the
Yeah,
text
Road
box.
saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because it kind of like trails.
But yes, Gabon, of course, is confused for the demon and everything, and then does the Roshi thing. Scopper Gabon, does he meet your expectations?
I mean, it's one of those things where we've been like, everything's Scopper Gabon. So for it to finally just like be so, like, we've been on the preparation for him for so long that, like, oh, the one time it's actually the most obvious likely candidate that, oh, it's the time that it is, kind of makes it deflating. I think people would have, people love being surprised and subverted, but like, we've learned how to read this story at this point, so there's a lot of things that we're just going to be able to piece together. It just makes a lot of sense for it to be him. I've speculated for a long time that their placements within the Grand Line are strategic. This kind of helps reinforce that, even though it does seem like he hasn't been on Elbaf this entire time, nor is Elbaf necessarily an island on the route to the Grand Line, or on the normal Grand Line route, I should say. But here he is, just where he needs to be. He wants to see Luffy, just like Rayleigh wanted to see Luffy. We know that he's at least been made aware of this kid before. So, whether it's a quirk of fate, whether it's a plan, it is interesting to see what they're going to do with him. I do kind of like that he looks less like his flashback version. Like, Scopper Gabon is kind of a bigger, like, burly guy. He's very top heavy, big, broad shouldered. And you can see that time has kind of taken that away from him a lot more than with Rayleigh, I think, in Rayleigh's design. So I don't think that's going to like make him weaker or anything. Don't read into that. But just like, there is this sense of like time actually passing when you look at him, which is neat.
He mentions the mixed races, Dosundatas being one of them. I was curious if you had a thought on who those might be. My first thought was the Tontatas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's pretty much what I went to. Like, it seems like it's kind of funny because, like, at the risk of being a little lewd, he's called the Mountain Eater. And just like Echiro Oda, yeah, just like Echiro Oda, to like pay off this 15-year-old mystery with a joke that I can't in good conscience say on this recording.
There are children listening to this.
Yeah, right?
He was called the Mountain Eater for other reasons, for let's say multiple reasons.
For multiple reasons. See, things can be double entendres in One Piece. That's totally normal. It's fine. But yeah, it is interesting that
with the sound.
It is kind of interesting that like the quote unquote left hand or left wing of the Pirate King is a kind of old man Sanji. That's fun. He's a
Yeah,
believer
it's
in
like a
free
nice little
love.
glimpse into, yeah, I think they even mentioned like, oh, it's like what Sanji's going to be like when he's older.
Yeah, they're gonna get along real well.
And some great comedy here too, where Luffy's like, forget I said that I was going to get the key to Loki's cups. Oh, that's so funny.
It's so good, and he's like not even like directly against it, which is curious too. Do you think he was on the island when this whole incident happened?
That's a good question. I would assume so. Yeah, because he says no one was ever able to stop him. And yeah, it does make you wonder, if maybe there was Gabon, maybe it's not a power thing necessarily. Maybe there's a reason why Gabon didn't want to get involved. Maybe based on the time, I mean, it's what, like 14 years ago now, we know? So there was a period of time between 14 years ago and then 6 years ago when Loki was stopped. It's hard to believe that Gabon wouldn't have been around at all. So Colin is 20. So it would fit if he had a kid and then he would come back later. But if that was the case, like, what would he have been up to? Now, my thinking is, and I'm coming to this from a place where I don't think Gabon could have beaten Kaido, for example. I'm getting the sense that Loki is close to Yonko level, between Yonko Commander and Yonko, possibly approaching Yonko level. Definitely able to skirmish and hold their own against Big Mom and Kaido. And I think that the fact that Shanks was able to beat him, it had to have been hard fought. But the fact that Shanks could beat him at all tells me that he's not so powerful that Shanks, like, I think Shanks risking a fight like that means something. And so if he is that powerful, I can absolutely see why Scopper Gabon wouldn't want to get involved, because everybody would be asking questions. Who is this guy? Right?
Yeah,
and that's what he doesn't want.
I want to add to that a little bit, because we know back when Rayleigh was talking with the Straw Hats about getting to the end of the Grand Line, like discovering the truth, whatever that meant. He mentions to Robin that when they get there, she may come to a different conclusion than they did, which is one of those things that kind of reintroduces this idea of dualism or multiple interpretations. Are we friend and foe? You decide, that kind of thing, right? Like we've seen this come up a few times over the course of the series. And of course, in the context of the Harley as well, that whole thing is so up to interpretation. So when people ask, why didn't Rayleigh do this, or why doesn't Gabon do that, yada, 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 I think that has to do with whatever their conclusion is. There's the note that people have pointed out that, the folks that we have met, Crocus and Rayleigh and now Gabon, just kind of so happen to be in places that are more susceptible or less susceptible to flooding, for example. Crocus is literally living in a whale. Rayleigh not only is an impressive swimmer, but also learned ship coding and everything. And now here's Gabon on Elbaf and possibly even be a regular traveler. We haven't seen his ship, for example. It could be all black, who knows? And, he's here at Elbaf, which has multiple levels. So even if the water level rises, I mean, it's going to rise where there's barely any people anyway. So it's this very interesting thing where they've clearly taken actions based on what they learned, but for whatever reason, those actions do not involve directly influencing world events if they can avoid it. And again, that doesn't mean that they don't. Rayleigh has stepped in multiple times, for example, and I have the feeling that Gabon will do something similar here as things kind of pick up. He was walking to the castle because he sensed peculiar hockey, for example. So this is one of those things where they are kind of choosing to be observers for some reason. We don't know. We probably won't know till we get to the end of this, but they clearly are not here to guide world events. Same with Odin. Odin didn't even really do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always a calculation to this that I think is lost on people. A lot of thinking that I'm glad that it doesn't spell it out all the time. It actually annoys me when he does, because sometimes I think that you do have to let the fan base kind of piece these things together and work a little hard. All from because otherwise it's just like, you're always chasing plot contrivances in order to like satisfy a group of people who will never be satisfied. That's where I stand. But do you think that power scaling makes sense? I know it's pointless, but I think that that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't really expect, like, is Scopper Gabon, like a current Scopper Gabon, as powerful as Kaido? No, because that doesn't even make sense. There's no reason to expect that. Same with Rayleigh. Even like Rayleigh's very powerful, but he said it himself. He could not fight current year Blackbeard, right? Like it would be unreasonable to expect them to. They're powerful and they're legendary, but they're old. Let's just be real about this. Like their role is to be a mentor now. They can't possibly be the hero. You know, you make a good point. Sometimes this is just plot. This is how this works. Like if Scopper Gabon could defeat Kaido, he would have, right? Duh. But
well,
yeah,
then also,
I think you've got the right estimation.
He doesn't have the will. And so much of this always comes down to the will, right? Of like, oh, a character thinking like, oh, maybe for kicks and giggles, I'm gonna, step into the world ring and risk it all. No, I think first of all, he's a guy who has too much to lose. He's got a wife and a kid at home, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think that this isn't his island. If something's going on with Elbaf and all this stuff, I think that him taking such an active role, I think it's more Shanks's place, and he can rely on Shanks to take care of something like that anyway. So I think at this point, the way I see it is that Shanks is more powerful than Kaido. I think that's pretty clear. The thing is, I don't think he's a lot stronger than Kaido. That's the distinction. And for Shanks, for example, for Shanks to make a move against Kaido is way too risky. Could he have done it? Could he have staged his own raid and taken Kaido down? Yes. However, it would have created a lot of problems. And that's what makes this world so interesting. We've talked about it all kinds of times on this very here pod.
I think you're spot on, because that's the moment that Shanks decides that he's finally going to actually move, right? He's going to actually take the necessary steps to get the One Piece for himself, right? Is this, Kaido doesn't have this big army, this big fortress, this big plot of land that he had full control of. Well, that's no longer the case. That's collapsed. Now Shanks can more freely move. That makes perfect sense.
And that's why, first of all, it's such a big thing that Luffy stakes claim over Fishman Island. And it's a big indication that he does not want his own grand fleet, because with grand fleets and territory comes the sorts of responsibilities that tie you down and make you less free.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
there's so many people,
make you an adult.
Good way to put it. So yes, we have our Scopper design. The design is great. I'm really, really interested to see what their skirmish, their little scuff is going to be like. I think Luffy turning into Joy Boy is going to be awesome. And I have a feeling that Gabon is going to know quite a bit about the Joy Boy stuff, because he of course knows about the Void Century and everything, and so we might get some nice little morsels.
No. Yeah, speaking of morsels, we got a very interesting Shanks morsel in the previous chapter.
Yeah, let's go. We're working backwards a little bit, but
let's work backwards.
That's okay. So yeah, Figureland Shamrock looks just like Shanks. And everybody's like, well, that means John was wrong because he says younger twin brother. I still think it's not true. Clone. I still think clone. I still think that Shanks as the baby, or at some point, was cloned, and this is just cope. I think Shamrock probably knows, but even if he doesn't, I think the idea is that they were so annoyed and upset that Shanks was abducted or turned into pirate or whatever as a little baby or a little kid, that Figureland Garlang decided to do this, to have this kind of like clone son to replace him. That's it. That's the theory. I'm not backing off. I'll always have this. I'm not going to admit I was wrong.
I mean, at this point, you are kind of reaching, though. Because, like, the fact that he went back is the thing that really strikes me.
Yeah, we're going to get a big Shanks backstory, huh?
Yeah, because the fact that he went back at some point begs a lot of questions. When? When did he go back? Is this a thing he did when he was younger? Was that him at the Reverie? Do we go back to that with Shanks at the Reverie? Like, what context would he even want to?
I think him finding out, my guess is that he probably found out who he really was at some point. I could see it being something that he learned or discovered before finding the Gum Fruit, or like around that time, maybe. It could be a situation that is what truly led him on the path to becoming an emperor, and him basically resolving what he would do and when and how. So that's how I could see it. And genuinely, I could also see that, first of all, he's a younger twin brother, which is interesting. I would love it. This is me coping hard, But I would love it if the story is that Shanks essentially decided to go to the Holy Land, learned who he was and all that stuff, sure, okay. And has this big sort of like thing with all this. And whatever happens in the Holy Land is what leads to him being cloned or finding out that he has a clone and realizing, well, I never had a twin brother. What are you talking about? Or that being like one of the revelations and him feeling like, a pirate's life for me.
I think this could be, I don't want to say like a Prince and Pauper situation, but a state where at some point in his life, he genuinely considered leaving the pirate's life for whatever reason. And the reason that I feel that way is because of the swords. The swords, I think, being the same means that he was not only like welcomed back with open arms, but probably spent some time there. And I feel like that's where his skill. Well, I don't know about that, but at least like that's where he actually learned his skills. I feel like he did this a while ago. Seems more likely.
And
then tragedy. He discovers that they made a clone and his name is Shamrock. I don't know. Like, sure, but this idea that like a part of Shanks's history involves seeing the world government from the inside in a way that not even like Roger did is what changed him.
It's just so wild that it's been 26 years and we are still gobbling up whatever morsel we can when it comes to Shanks. We know nothing about this man. How is Oda doing this to us?
This is genuinely probably the biggest reveal Shanks-wise since, is
One Piece Red? Well, no, I mean him being in the box and learning that he was found as a baby, like that stuff was pretty big.
Yeah,
that he was a celestial dragon, big. That was pretty big.
Yeah, but these play into it too. It's kind of feeling like this is the same piece of bread that those breadcrumbs are coming from.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, because the arc is clearly setting up some big confrontations. Who could take on Shamrock? My guess is not that many people. And so, what's going to happen there? I think some people going to die. But Luffy versus evil Shanks, if that happens, what's the narrative purpose of that? To show us that Luffy isn't ready to take on literal Shanks yet?
I don't hate that.
He looks powerful.
We do need, we've talked about this before. In a lot of ways, Egghead was kind of easy in terms of the Straw Hats, even at the absolute like worst moments, still had a decent grip on things. And Vegapunk didn't even die. Like nothing went the world government's way during that. Like that was basically a straight W for the Straw Hats. So, we've talked about this before. There has to be some kind of like settling of the ground as we start queuing up the final moments of this story.
There was at least, there was the function of how, Luffy had to come to terms with the fact that there were these 5 powerful creatures who he couldn't defeat by normal means. And so that was kind of a big like,
really, like
we
we're
have
to
run away again
later. But like,
yeah, but it's treated kind of similar to Whole Cake.
Yeah, they were always going to run though.
It's similar to Whole Cake though, when like Luffy has that moment where he fights Big Mom and is like, I am not strong enough to fight a Yonko yet. And it's not like he's in abject terror, but it's more sort of like my adventure is put on hold yet again. That I can't just go wherever I want because there are these, now I have to face up these kinds of people who are just like, there was a little bit of a frustration there. So here's the thing. Does that mean he'll face something similar with this character? Are we going to learn more about the demon yokai stuff? The fact that it's not him with the devil fruit, it's his sword, makes me kind of wonder too about Gunko. Is it Gunko who has the arrow fruit? Or is it the bandages? I don't really think so. I think it's one of those things where I think she's not like a Yoko celestial dragon. I think she's one of the like characters who's probably like adopted into Holy Knights.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how this works because
she's secretly
she sure
Zelda.
Talks, yeah, like
Princess of Hyrule.
Talks a big game, right? Like she talks like she has that same affect of nobility, but she's effectively a squire, right? So what's up with that?
Yeah, I love her design too. The arrow fruit is super cool. And the devil fruit sword. I was not expecting this. Now we have seen Funkfried. That was Spandam's sword that had like eaten a devil fruit. We still don't know how. There are the theories out there that somebody just poured the juices of a devil fruit or something on the sword or whatever. But literally like stabbed the devil fruit with a sword. Who knows? But I was not expecting the next time something like that to come up. Like, look, you just imagine like Fungfried next to this like evil Cerberus sword, and it's kind of funny,
right? And like the sword like manifests, like Cerberus manifests and everything, right? But the sword doesn't like disappear. It's not like the sword transforms into Cerberus. It's like Cerberus is manifested out of the sword,
right?
Which makes just so different than how Fungfried worked.
Which makes
me
the wonder.
Dog gun, or the other ones that we've seen.
Could that be what we're gonna have with Mihawk? Is Mihawk sword gonna do the same kind of thing? Be a devil fruit?
No, because I foresee Zoro looking at something like that and being like, "That's bullcrap." Put that away. We're here to fight. I think.
What if that's like his last his move though? He's like, I only do this.
This is the, in my opinion, because we have this every time somebody so much as touches a sword in One Piece, we have to have the Mihawk conversation. Mihawk being the world's greatest swordsman. We are talking about a very specific skill, and that is the handling of a sword for the purposes of sword fighting. Okay? This is different than other, I have a sword and I do other things. Spandam is not a swordsman. Right? Nobody would reasonably say that, right? Like, Shanks is a swordsman. Every attack we've seen Shanks make involves actually using his sword. That tracks. But having a sword does not make you a tier on the ladder of Zoro's specific growth. Right? I would even argue that, like, while King definitely pushed him on his limits, I wouldn't even say King is really a swordsman in the same way as some of the other, like Kaku, for example. Kaku is more swordsman-like, I would think, at least before they go weird with it. And the reality of Mihawk as an obstacle for Zoro to overcome is mastery of that craft specifically. Not just power, not just hockey, not just endurance, but literal swordcraft. I imagine that, like, the key to the Mihawk fight is going to be, we talked about it briefly at the top of the episode, like Sakamoto Days. The key to the action in Sakamoto Days is choreography. It's working within a set space and making every single motion that a character takes very deliberate and very fast. Deliberate and fast.
Yeah, I hear you.
Mihawk is going to be that kind of fight.
I get it, but I still think he could fit in something. Not like a Bankai, but some kind of like,
oh, yeah, I feel like he could, hockey manipulation, right?
Like some sort of sword magic, where he's still handling a sword, but it doesn't have to be like the Cerberus thing. That's not what I'm saying. But anyway,
like Divine Departure is a great example of that, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, or don't forget Roger was a swordsman.
Yeah, hockey absolutely opens up the potential for that. I think that's what we're gonna see is specifically leveraging hockey in the skill set of sword use.
I do want to point out, because we said before, like, oh, this is, for kids. But then that shot, that whole panel where the Cerberus dogs are eating at Loki as he goes, damn you to hell. Like, whoa, okay, Oda, bruh. That was pretty hard.
Wow. We did not see it going that way, like, at all. I genuinely thought we were going to go in, get this key, and like everybody was going to converge on Loki. And now we're completely off base on that.
I do like how Luffy's like, yeah, Shanks was in the Roger Pirates. The Roger Pirates were like family aside from Buggy. Even now, Luffy throwing shade at Buggy, who helped him. Which
is so funny, because if there is any member of the Roger Pirates that was closest to Shanks, it was Buggy. Like, Shanks's perspective on that relationship is entirely different than everyone else's. Like, Buggy doesn't like him. Luffy's like, you guys didn't really know each other. Like, you're a jerk. And Shanks is like, hey, old pal, how's it going? You want to take this hat back to this kid for me? Hey, do you want to come be on my crew? Like he's always been that way with him. It's so funny.
They did have their big falling out, though, at Roger's death in the rain, and like Buggy kind of told him off.
Literally, that's Buggy's fault. That's not Shanks' fault. Shanks is
but I'm just saying that I think Shanks is aware.
Got the hangups. Well, yeah, sure, but like Shanks has no problems with Buggy. Like he's like, if he wanted to join me today, That would be great. I think Shanks even gets a little bit of joy out of seeing Buggy like also being an emperor. I think he enjoys that.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%.
And only partially because it'll be, he's like, this is not a problem for me.
Robin learning more about Nika. This is very promising. I'm so glad that this is happening, in fact, because I think that Robin explains it all, that being a major theme of some future arcs, and her kind of like processing this information, the stuff about the first world, the idea that apparently there was fire inside of the planet and maybe hinting that they needed water to put it out. And that's why there's so much ocean. I don't know, but it's just, it just warms my heart. There's some shots where like Robin is like smiling with her mouth closed, looking at this information, and that's how I am. Like reading this.
And like you got to remember, she's reading the Harley, and
Yes.
Frankie's looking at the mural. But Oda uses juxtaposition to tell us these two things are directly related to each other, but they don't know that. So
they don't.
And Frankie's clearly going to try to get Robin to this mural. I'm very curious to find out if this mural survives whatever is about to happen, by the way.
The mural, it's incredible. We see the Atom Tree. We see some yokai. We see Emmett. We see a Laboon whale.
Do you think that's the actual Atom Tree, or do you think that's the tree that devil fruits come from?
It could be that. It could definitely be that. We also see, of course, Nika, or Joy Boy, rather. We see a yokai holding the sun. We see like all the different races. We see pirate ships, but they have like a different kind of construction to them. So it looks, unique. There are like characters holding up all these power. We see like a futuristic kind of gear-like steampunk city. Are we getting steampunk? Is that what the ancient kingdom was? That it was literally like a steampunk factory?
Yeah, like it's fully industrialized. Like again, we talked about this. One Piece is technically a post-apocalyptic story. But here I am looking at these buildings that are drawn like me as a kid drawing a city in elementary school. Like it's never even clicked for me before that like what if at some point the world of One Piece just looked like ours? What if in reality the One Piece Earth is just Earth this whole time?
Yeah, we see.
Oh my gosh.
We see minks, fishmen, we see a Lunarian, we see what looks like it could be the Noah. We see a character who definitely looks like Eam, but it looks like what they're wearing is a crown. And so like, is that because it's it's a less silhouetted version of Emu.
Right.
And it's like, it's more of like, I mean, we figured it was probably a hat, I guess, but the idea that maybe Emu was royalty of some sort. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, we assumed that, but when is that happening? Like that's,
but also, yes.
Like the people, going down, bringing up the energy, which I'm just going to call the Mother Flame because that seems like Occam's razor on that. There's 19 of them. Don't know if you noticed that. There's 19 of them. And then there's Emu.
Yeah.
There's I've been staring at this off and on for 2 weeks now. And just like every single time I do, it feels like I'm seeing something else.
How does the world government not know this exists?
Now I'm starting to understand why it was so important for Elbaf to not be found by the world government, right? This is a poneglyph that people can read. You know what I mean?
Well, not that they could make sense out of most of it, but yes.
No,
yes.
but I mean, this still does so much that like they were willing to nuke an entire island over the studying of the poneglyphs. Imagine what they would do if they knew this was here.
Not only could Joy Boy stretch, but Joy Boy apparently was also a swordsman and had a shield, a little cookie shield. We see the moon. Enel's coming back into the story, Travis. The moon.
I mean, the Ark is right there. The Ark Maxim is right there. Like, maybe for real, actually.
We see multiple.
This is insane.
Because we see like 2 ships that look like they could be the Noah. We see a big one that's kind of coming up this tree. We see the one that's like slightly above it, getting breathed on by fire. We don't see Zoe, right? Like we don't see Zunisha.
So some people have suggested that the gray background that you see like the bigger arc going up and like Emu standing on, they kind of note that the top of that almost is like a trunk.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
I feel like that might be reaching, but again, if this is supposed to be a child's drawing, it doesn't have to make coherent sense.
Well, then the idea there, implying a connection between Emu and Zunisha, would make a lot of sense. So that's definitely on the table. All the X's on that one yokai had me thinking a lot because, first of all, as soon as I saw it, Laboon!
I didn't
Not
even
just a
think. I
literal
didn't even
whale.
think. I didn't even think about the X's. Like that has to be on purpose because they're
Oh,
like
yes.
it's like X and X and X and X. That has to mean something.
The other yokai don't have it. And so it's like, well, what does it
Yeah.
mean? The
What
fact
is
that there's so much. Yeah, yeah. The conveyor belt stuff, the energy, clearly, like all these people like giving energy to what looks like Eam and the lightning that goes into the tree, I think, or it's a branch. I mean, what is happening here, Travis? I want answers.
like that's the question? Is this actually a mural depicting three things? Is it depicting one thing that repeats itself over time? You know,
Is that
this
Sonic
kind
the
of like
Hedgehog over there?
is that Sonic? I mean, maybe. So here's the wild thing, right? Could Frankie be obscuring a part of this mural? Is there something at the bottom of that tree?
Super.
Could you imagine?
Like, what would it be, Travis? A buccaneer?
Artur in his video like took that clip of Willem Dafoe from The Lighthouse where he's like looking up at the sky, just absolutely like did like he's just
Oh, yeah.
disassociating
We're talking
and
about.
just in shock and awe, and like that's Frankie right now.
Well,
He
that's
doesn't
also
even know it.
Artur, who has his 5-hour video on his One Piece mega theory
Yeah.
that is
Oh, yeah,
all about the
yeah.
ancient kingdoms, all that stuff.
And like has had the 1-2 punch of surprise, there was a second catastrophe and a third age, and like then surprise, here's everything laid out and you cannot decipher it. Like to be a One Piece theorist right now is insane.
Let's go through this. So the first world, within the earth, there was fire. Mankind succumbed to greed and touched the forbidden sun. So the idea of the dawn coming out of the earth, Travis, that being a literal thing of like a sun coming out of the ground. It's like the most literal dawn sunrise ever. But the enslaved prayed and the sun god appeared. The earth god raged, and with its serpent of hellfire shrouded the world in death and darkness, and they will never meet. So we're talking about this like mythical kind of like shaping of the planet, I suppose, and this idea of like I mean, we don't have a lot of serpent stuff that's come up in the story.
So here's, and I'm gonna start going off the beaten path a little bit. Try to tie this together. If this was an industrialized world, and I'm not saying this was the ancient kingdom, I think if the ancient kingdom fits anywhere, it's going to be coming up.
Yes.
If the original One Piece world was this big industrialized thing, it's climate change, right? Mankind was greedy. They mined all of the natural resources of the earth, and the planet itself changed as a result. I'm not saying that like One Piece is this big climate change referendum or anything, but
it might be.
I could see like a volcanic event, perhaps several of them, with the end result being the creation of a great like serpent-like structure around the world, possibly of red earth, big red earth circling the globe, maybe some sort of red line forming. You know, that I feel like is more what we're talking about, is some sort of cataclysm that maybe the ancient weapons are we know that they were called ancient weapons even during the time of the Great Kingdom, so maybe they were built during this time. They run on atomic energy. Maybe this is literally just nuclear war. Maybe it's just fallout.
Well, hey, yeah, call out to the fallout. I will say there's something about Figurlin Shamrock having a Cerberus kind of like motif, being the literal guard to hell, and everything we've seen of the Gorosei has just alluded that they are hellish beings. And, you know, reading this the first time even, I've done a lot of research into Taino mythology because that's the basis of the fiction that I write. And there's so much Caribbean folklore here. There's always been a lot of Caribbean folklore in One Piece because it's based on pirates, right? And so Caribbean.
Makes sense.
Very, very popular pirate kind of thing. Not the only pirate lore, obviously, but a ton of it. And this idea of like, first of all, the serpent is very sacred in Taino mythology. It represents a lot of things, like a transferring from one world to the next. That's like literally because the Tainos thought of serpents as the creatures that create the caves and the caverns that were so predominant in the islands and everything. And so there are so many stories around the serpents sort of being tools of the gods. So when I'm reading this and I'm thinking like sun god, earth god, the sun god is kind of like the mother of like the earth. It's kind of more of a mother nature sort of thing. And
Interesting.
there's no real earth god. There's just the storm god, hurricanes, stuff like that. And so I kept wondering, like, what is this like earth god thing though? Could it actually, like, what about it is earth like? That's the thing that I was like, oh wait, what's happening here? It's especially telling too because the idea of like enslaved people, who was more enslaved than the Taínos, literally like enslaved out of extinction. And so leading into the second world, which is like the colonization, it's like a 1-to-1 because the first world is like the myths that the Taino culture is based on. The second world is sort of where like this kingdom, powerful kingdom, the Spanish Empire, came around and started genociding them like crazy. And you usher in a whole era of piracy. You still have the vestiges of this old world, but a lot of the history around what happened to the Taino people is not taught. It's actually shunned, and people get very aggressive and mean if you say something negative about Christopher Columbus, for example. I'm just saying, Travis, my biases are coming in, and I'm reading into everything.
I like this insight. I think that's super helpful here, especially in talking about things like the appearance of a serpent here that hasn't really been set up before. That's a really sizable contribution to like this kind of theory craft, because that's not something I've heard anywhere else. Like I like that a lot.
And have we had a lot of caves in One Piece? A ton. Definitely not like caverns. And caverns are so metaphorical in this like part of the world. So it is kind of weird that we've never gotten stuff like that, at least that I'm remembering.
Okay. So I know we've had for a really long time that like Enies Lobby is where Laugh Tale is, like it's below Laugh Tale, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we gotta go all the way back. What if it's not one of these like, unnatural holes that have been punched in the earth by the weapons, which is what I think Enies Lobby actually is? What if it's an actual cave? What if Laugh Tale, you have to descend into the core of the earth?
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked that theory. Where there used to be fire.
I've never really entertained that, but now I am.
Sailing underground.
With what you're saying.
Coming out the other side. Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely on the table. Especially because if there was like fire in the earth and it was mined and then, yeah. The second world part, within the void, there was breath. That made me think of like storms. The forest god tamed demons, and the sun spread the fires of war. So the forest god tamed demons like devil fruits, right? Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Literal, like, because the sun spreads the fires of war. So like the idea of like devil fruits coming into being, there you go. Those of the half moon dreamed. The will of D, absolutely the will of D. Is this confirmation of the will of D, Travis? We've got dream and we have a half moon. Come on, Travis. Those of the moon dreamed.
Well, then who? So we have the half moon, and then we have the full moon implicitly. So why that? That's what I'm having a hard time reconciling.
Because, Travis, it was a full moon that night, and you need the half.
It just see, that's the problem. Well, it's like
they wouldn't have gone so long without the full moon.
Okay, so maybe it is the minks.
They dreamed.
Maybe.
The sea god stormed.
Yeah.
So that's where the storm stuff finally comes in, and they will never meet. And then the third world, within the chaos, there was emptiness. The inconvenient remnants recall the promised day. Okay. And hear the voice of the half moon, the voice of everything, the will of D. The sun god dances and laughs, guiding the world to its end. The sun returns and brings a new morning, and they will surely meet. So, when do you think Oda came up with this? Like 1999? Who probably wrote this?
I mean, I don't want to like. This is the hard thing, because we only have the things that Oda says when it comes to like how he's planned out One Piece. I don't think that like he wrote Romance Dawn and like the pitch chapter, not the first chapter, but like the old one where Garp had the hat. I don't think he wrote that and then wrote this down. I think he came to this.
It was 2 days later.
But like, it's one of those things where even now the vagueness of it makes it really difficult to pin down what we're talking about here, right? Like, is this like, has there's just been a nebulous thing? I almost want to reread the whole series again with this in context and try to put it together. But it also feels like it's impossible to do, and that there are pieces that we're just not privy to yet. The serpent is a good example of this, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, who are the they that this keeps referring to? My gut instinct is the people, like the various cultures and societies.
Occam's razor.
Next chapter, we have Gabon talking about like, cross relationships and how they never stick around for very long. That's kind of interestingly timed. But at the same time, if the world was industrialized and was this big global superpower in the very beginning, would that not be the peoples of the world like connected, at least in some degree? How industrialized, how futuristic can a world be without like the ability to communicate over long distances?
Yeah,
like, that's one of the number one things you have to solve. So I feel like
my
there's
guess
names here that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think that it's not like this is referring, because it's pronouns. I think it's referring to maybe two characters specifically who
that's what it feels
we just
like.
don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think, by the way, going into this arc, what was the thing that we talked about so much? We want to learn more about the gods, not just the sun god. And here we have a bunch. Because in addition to the sun god, we have the earth god, the forest god. These all make sense so far. We don't have a moon god. We just have people who dream of the moon. And we have the sea god. So that's, what, 3 gods? 4 gods? I'm Dr. Seuss. Who are these gods, Travis?
I mean, we've heard it floated a lot about Emu being the god of the sea or the originator of the devil fruits, and or both. I mean, if the Void Century is the second world, the sea god stormed, man killed the sun and became god, the celestial dragons destroy their opponents and ascend to godhood, and the sea god stormed would track with...
Right. That's Emu
with
killing
all that.
Joy Boy.
Yeah.
Man killed the sun, became god. Yeah.
And then the sea god stormed. That's probably the clearest of any of these if we are tracking correctly. But at the same time, could this again be a natural thing? Is the sea god just literally referring to the after effects of the ancient weapons?
Travis, within the earth there was fire, the sun, hellfire. A man marked by flames, Travis. What flames? Travis.
Is the ship black because he's marked by black fire?
Black fire? Wait, Teen Titans?
Because we have like the black clouds and everything that we've seen, and like the flames around, like even earlier in the chapter where you have like the kind of like the black fire around like Cerberus swords and everything.
Yes, yeah,
what if he's literally marked by hellfire? Yeah, Amaterasu. Like I was literally gonna make an Itachi joke.
Well, because we see in the mural, like, what if Amaterasu hellfire? It comes from these demon yokai hell creatures. And this is a character who directly came into contact with these creatures.
With that fire.
Which is why, yes. I don't know how the whirlpool thing fits in, but yes.
Yeah, the whirlpool thing is still... What if it's somebody who got power from Emu or got a hold of one of these devil fruits or something, and it lets them do that? What if they have like the ability to control sea currents? Not water, sea currents.
I don't know. We're starting to venture into uber speculation.
We could do this mural for another hour by itself. Like you said it, and it's true.
There's a little fish, a little Oda fish.
Yeah.
Right there.
Is that supposed to be a sea king? Like, is that Shirahoshi, and then like that's the sea king that she's controlling?
Hopefully,
or just like
Poseidon.
literally do the fish like team up with Joy Boy?
Well, that was another thing. Do you think any of these things are ancient weapons? Right, because you could argue Poseidon's right there, so that's an ancient weapon. But Pluton, do we see like a battleship? I don't really. Like, I see ships.
I think the ship, like the one that has like the lightning bolt coming down, could be Uranus, but we haven't seen.
Well,
Uranus.
there is a flame that's like a mother. Well, you do also see like that big. So the big yokai on the right is like shooting fire at the other kind of yokai thing in the center. So two of them are fighting each other.
So I was going to say this too. What if these are not demons? These are the weapons.
Nah. And so the one that's holding the sun is the mother flame?
Yeah, the one holding the sun. Well, the sun doesn't necessarily have to be the mother flame necessarily. The sun could be a concept, right? It doesn't have to or it could be the literal sun for all we know.
Don't get metaphorical on me now, Travis. Don't get figurative.
This whole thing is metaphor. Like, you know, if the serpent is, you know, let's just say Pluton, and then the one on the far left is Uranus, because that's the one that we know Emu has, that would put Poseidon kind of in the center. And I know you're like, well, there's Shirahoshi right there. We don't know that. Like, the biggest thing that I've had with the reveal of one of these weapons being a person is, how does that work exactly? Is this a blood? Like, it has to be a bloodline element thing.
There is one ship. There is one ship that's going against everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. So, by the way, I can't wait to see all of these. Like, it looks like Joy Boy's crew. I can't wait to see what they actually look like. And I hope one of them literally is like a fish, because that'd be amazing. But one of them looks like a buccaneer. It looks like they had a giant on the crew. There's like a cool little mink that looks like a little, I don't know, like a squirrel or something. You could see that one ship is probably Lily, the one with the flag that looks different from everybody else's. And there's like a lady with like hair flowing behind her, right? So that's most likely Lily. And they're all ahead of Emu. Emu's the only one who's kind of like staying behind. Travis.
Yeah. Or again, these
and
are
Joy Boy had a
timelines.
Lunarian on his crew, Travis? Since when?
We kind of thought that. We kind of thought that, right? We thought that they were involved.
Okay.
But like, you know what is notable, and I will call this out, is Joy Boy doesn't look like a fishman.
Well, we don't know. We don't know yet.
Throwing that out there.
You don't know that yet, Travis. Wait, why are you so sure? Look at those feet. Those look webbed to me. But there's something to be said about how, well, Joy Boy's shield, it's the same insignia as the shield that looks just like Lily's sail, if that is Lily.
Yeah, this has come up a few times as like a possible like remnant of the Great Kingdom. So I feel like, again, if anything is representing that period of time, it's this.
It looks like it's not a paw print, but it looks like a sun, or like one circle with lots of little circles around it. So that seems to symbolize unity, some kind of like coalition of sorts. There's something to that. Yeah.
And again, maybe this is all a dream. Is it's like implode? Like, is this a vision? Did this
Why is that whale flying?
Why is the whale flying? Why is there rain right by the whale flying? What's like? Again, every time I look at it, I see something new.
But okay, we're over time. I didn't have anything else for 1137 to really. We already kind of covered the big Shamrock stuff. The name Shamrock, it's fine. Sure. Shanks, Shamrock. We're doing Irish? All right, sure.
I mean,
Shamrock
we were always...
I hope Oda reveals a lot of stuff about Shamrock in March. That'd be funny.
It seems like that's going to happen. Oh my God. Are they going to do a Shamrock flashback and then we see like Shanks on like one panel and then not again and we just don't do anything with that?
Yeah.
He wouldn't.
Yeah. And then we'll see Dragon like just with a ... looking to the east. Oh, sweet. See you next year, Dragon.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. Definitely no time for comments. And there are so many comments, so I do apologize for that. Literally the chapter just already came out and there's already a bunch for 1139 and many, many, many for 38. Like double what we usually see. So, well, yeah. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed our little void conversation. One that was devoid probably of revelations. But we'll be back soon. I think we I actually don't know. Do we have another chapter coming up next week? Or is this
break this week. Yep.
Okay. We finally have some time to breathe. But we'll let you know if we have anything else coming up down the pike. And so, yeah, stay tuned. I'll talk to you all later.